Here we are once again with more of the More People podcast. I'm your host today, Andrew Fitzmaurice, and I'm joined today by Trevor Pfeiffer of Garden Trade News. Welcome,
Morning,
Trevor.
Morning, Andrew.
Very keen to cover all sorts of things today, but we'll centre around the garden centre sector, I suppose, given that's your specialism. And you've got some audio, music passions as well. So this is a familiar-ish setting to you, and you spend a lot of time working in the industry with our clients, a lot of our clients. But for people who don't know you, who are you? How did you get into the sector? What are you doing here?
Well, I am now editor of Garden Trade News, and it's a small business. Potting Shed Press is our company. We do Garden Trade News, we do Garden Radio, which plays in about 100 garden centres across the UK. And we do lots of other bits for the industry, for the garden industry. But my background is that my first job was selling advertising on a local newspaper. And I soon discovered that I was better at selling advertising to motorcycle dealers because I rode a motorbike. And I wrote into Motorcycle News saying, have you got any jobs going? And eventually they gave in to me and said yes. So I spent 7 years selling advertising on Motorcycle News. Which was, looking back on it, was a wonderful time actually, because I had a company motorbike and I got paid to ride around the lanes of Essex visiting motorcycle dealers.
Whereas now you're paid to wear floral shirts.
Now I get paid to wear floral shirts.
So all the motorcycle stuff is pre-floral shirt era.
But the reason I then somehow migrated to gardening from motorcycling is that back in those days, if you wanted to move on within the business, you either had to move to Peterborough and become a publisher of magazines, or you had to sell advertising to advertising agencies for the rest of your life. And I decided to be a publisher, moved to Peterborough and published a portfolio of magazines which were motorcycling, railway and gardening. And the gardening ones have stuck. So I've been involved in gardening magazines since about 1989. Garden Trade News was one of the magazines I published then. Practical Gardening. I then went on to publish Garden News, Garden Answers, and also the RHS's magazine, The Garden. And I soon realised that actually being involved in the garden industry, although I was a media person at the time, was a pretty good place to be. The garden industry kind of happens every year. The seasonality, every year grass grows, daffodils bloom, and people go gardening. Now it goes to a greater or lesser extent, and there's different trends within that, but actually it's a pretty sustainable business to be involved in.
And it's a big space, it's a much bigger sector.
Yeah.
When we see each other at trade shows or awards dues, the number of companies that perhaps the man on the street hasn't even heard of or hasn't actually paid attention to whilst perhaps picking up compost or growing media or fertilizer or bird feeders or whatever it is, they don't necessarily think about it all that much. But the number of companies and the amount of people it employs and the amount of customers that exist, it's a big old space.
Yeah, it's a big old space, yeah. And when I got the opportunity to leave the big publisher and set up my own business, it was pretty clear to me that what I wanted to do was run a business that was purely focused on gardening. And I always wanted to be seen as part of the gardening industry rather than part of the media industry. The sole objective reason for a trade title to exist is to help the industry. You can't run a trade title and beat up on the industry. You've got to be there to help them. So we target garden centre professionals as our core. They're the people who are actually going to buy the product from the suppliers, stock it on the shelves and sell it through. And then by developing an online version of GTN, which we do via an email newsletter called GTN Extra, we've actually, over the last few years, been able to morph the content of the magazine so that now the magazine only has content that we've actually created. Very little press release material in there. We use that online, but the magazine has to be really unique and relevant to the industry. And photo tours of garden centres, which we put online as well, but they're some of our most read bits of content because people just love to see what's going on in another garden centre.
Well, I think you do a very good job, and being one of those associated parts of the industry as opposed to a core manufacturer or a core retailer like us in recruitment. We're a service provider, but we're passionate about the sector.
Yeah.
and that passion has to come through, and the authenticity with which you hold yourself and which you speak, you'd get caught out very quickly if you were a peripheral leech, I suppose.
Well, there's a key thing actually that's been developed over that I've developed in my thinking over the years, and that is you have to work well in our sector. You have to have a sense of nurture, and the reason for that is because the good retailers come from a growing background. You know, when they started off, when they started developing their businesses, and you can't sell dead plants. So they have this sense of nurture which is built into their psyche. If you don't tap into that, if you don't match that sense of nurture, they're not going to buy from you. And if they don't buy from you, then you're not going to exist. So, you know, and I think that's why people from outside find it very hard. Some of them find it very hard to exist within the gardening sector. Venture capital people find it very, very difficult to make any headway, just because they just don't get it. They don't get the fact that you know, you've got to, it takes a little bit longer to do things in our sector. You know, the rate of adoption of a new product, which is a standard sort of chart graph, and it's 3 months to go from the early adopters to the early majority. That 3 months in gardening, I believe, is 3 years, because you've got to go through 3 seasons. Everything we sell is seasonal.
Those seasons aren't always
Oh,
equal either, are they? You know, it doesn't take much in terms of wet weather or frost to kill a peak trading season like an Easter or the bank holidays.
this year has been a great example of that, because this year we've had no peaks, none of the bank holiday peaks, none of the real seasonal peaks. It just didn't happen because the weather wasn't there. Interestingly, the one peak that garden centres have every year that they can pretty much rely on is Christmas. The last week of November, first week of December is actually when we do our bestsellers volume sales analysis. Those are the weeks where actually they're the top weeks of the year in terms of volume product sales. And we're just about to start our trek around over 100 garden centres this year to find the greatest garden centre team, Christmas team. And I have to say that's a real joy to do. I mean, I will only visit 10, 15 garden centres out of those. I've got a team of people that go and meet everybody. But Christmas isn't just down to one person in a garden centre. It's down to the team working well. And at Christmas, they do work as a team. You get the departmentitis that happens in garden centres during the spring and summer disappears at Christmas. Everybody gets involved. Everybody has some fun.
What have you seen evolve, you know, when it comes to so much consolidation we've seen in recent years in garden centres?
Yeah.
How phenomenal the rise in restaurants is as
Yes.
part of a garden centre's offering, not just plants, and how many different concessions and different products you can now buy in a garden centre.
Yeah.
It's not really just garden. I guess you've seen lots of those things evolve over your time. How has that changed, and where do you see it going next?
Well, restaurants are so important for garden centres, and without them, I think this year would have been a complete disaster. The interesting thing there is where garden centres are using that innate sense of nurture to make sure that their food offering is really good. Some of them know that if you screw up on customer service with food and catering, actually that's harder to put right. So hopefully that's working through. And there's quite a few garden centres I know that have been up their restaurant offering, but they do need to keep the quality. That's really key. Yeah, if you sell good plants, you've got to sell good coffee.
Because these places are destinations to go
Yeah.
for an afternoon, you can go for an afternoon and just have the experience without actually buying anything.
You can.
But if you can convert more
Yeah.
of the footfall into
Yes.
a transaction in the restaurant, which is commonplace, whether
Yeah.
it's a coffee or it's a full lunch, pushing the sale of plants is so important, because that often gets pushed further and further from the focus of the footfall.
The plants are really important for garden centres in that they do give them a unique positioning. And, you know, great garden centres often have plants on the way to the restaurant and plants on the way back. And people may not buy that plant that time, but they might come back and buy it another time. But if plants are there and plants make people feel good, great. If they feel good while they're in a garden centre, they're more likely to buy something than they are if they go to somewhere that doesn't have plants.
Well, they're not as commoditized, are they? You know, there's a lot of quality and emotion attached to that purchase. If you're buying a spade, whatever brand it is, you can trust that online, if you wanted to do so, online the spade is the spade, because you know it's the exact same SKU, exact same everything. Whereas a plant, you want to see the condition. Even if you've got a fantastically merchandised range in front of you, you're still looking to pick the nicest one or the best one.
That's right.
So plant quality is so important. But it's a very hard purchase to reproduce online. There are some very good online places to buy plants, obviously, but you're at the whims of whether the picture is the same as what turns up in the box and how well it's travelled. Whereas you see it and you pick it up, you know what you're getting.
Well, it's a bit like going to trade shows. You know, you can plan a route around a trade show, but actually sometimes the discovery is turning a corner and finding a stand that's selling something you didn't know that you could sell in your store. The same thing is when people walk around a plant area, just see a plant, go, that could be, you know, the surprise. That's a great bit of customer service, isn't it? Because I'm a great believer in customer service, not just being how well the tills operate or how well the phone's answered, but real good customer service is somebody going to a retailer, wanting or finding something that they need that works for them, buying it, taking it home, planting it and growing it, and it being a success. That's customer service, because then people are more likely to go back and buy it again, visit again, but also they'll tell other people about it. And good customer service should promote promotion, you know, word of mouth. That's what everybody should be aspiring to do, I think.
One question I wanted to ask while I've got you, because I think I'm right in saying this, when we go to the GEMA Awards, every category has a theme tune associated with it. The winner has a particular theme song that's got some nebulous connection or some very good connection to the brand, the product, the company. You pick all these, right? Is that your favourite part of the year, picking those tunes?
Sometimes it's hard. No, it's something I learned. I used to do when I was at EMAP. I used to organise big company awards at EMAP, and one of the things that I picked it up from a guy called David Hepworth. Some people may know he's a music journalist. But, you know, he just sort of picked up that you can actually play walk-on music that's relevant to the award. The amazing thing about it is that people who win generally don't realise the walk-on music, but it's the audience that do. Really important things. Everybody must be able to see, everybody must be able to hear, but also you're organising the event and staging the event, not for the winners, because they have a great time, but it's for the audience. And so that's where my choice of music really comes in. Yes, I want it to be linked to the award where possible, but actually it has to be ideally something that the audience can sing along to. And I was hugely pleased to see at the GEMAs, there was quite a few of those tracks that I picked out where people were singing along to them.
Well, I think I've done about 10 of those now. Right. It's definitely one of my favourite parts of it, is trying to clock how you pick the tune, particularly if it's one that only you get, that no one else has really clocked as to why it's that one.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good fun. And you know, so I'm interested in music. We run Garden Radio, which I don't choose all the music for Garden Radio, but you know, we used to have our own studio and do lots of voice recording and stuff like that. So it's just it's kind of a bit of a hobby of mine that I do. I do it for the GEMAs. I also do it for the GCA conference.
Well, keep it up. I'm a fan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you. Cheers.